G'day, it's Pete here and welcome to the Endplay Technique short course. Here we are for week 1, day 2, where we're going to look at some common endplay positions. So what are we trying to get to? What are we trying to get our opponents to do when we endplay them? This is what we're really going to focus on today. Now, there are 3 main things that we want to try and do when we try and endplay them. Any one of these 3 things. We either want to get them to give us a rough and discard, or we want to get them to lead into a finesse position, or open up a frozen suit. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about frozen suits later, but it's very similar to getting them to lead into a finesse position. But we'll just jump straight in and look at giving them a rough and discard. Okay, so if we're north-south and hearts are trumps, we wanted both of the last 2 tricks, it would be pretty tricky if we were on lead. We could play a heart and then we just lose a diamond to the ace. If west is on lead, they get to cash their ace. But if east is on lead and they play a spade, what can happen is that we get to rough in one hand by playing the 2 of hearts, and we get to throw our diamond loser away in the other hand. So if east is on lead here, we actually get to get both of the tricks because they've given us a rough and discard. So what's actually needed for a rough and discard to work? So we need 3 main things. Firstly, we need a loser in both hands. So both sides need a loser. So we've got a losing diamond. Tick. The next thing is both sides need to have trumps. If only one side has trumps, then it's not actually a rough and discard. Even though they are roughing and they are discarding, it doesn't actually achieve the same thing. With a rough and discard, what actually happens is typically the declaring side is trying to score their trumps individually so that they score more trump tricks all up. Whereas if only one side's got trumps, so if only north had trumps, they're always going to score that trick anyway, so the rough and discard doesn't actually do anything. So for a rough and discard to actually be beneficial for the declaring side, both sides need to have trumps. The third thing that you need to have is the person on lead is leading a suit that both players are void in. So if both players are void, then you can rough in one hand and discard in the other. So here, when they lead the king of spades, both sides have losers. North and south both have a losing diamond. They both have trumps. And east is leading a suit that they're both void in. So these are the 3 things that you need to happen for a rough and discard. If we extended it out and gave something like this, and so that north's got an extra trump. Again, if north-south wanted to win all the tricks and east played a spade, we've got those 3 conditions. We've got both sides having trumps, both sides having losers, and east leading a suit that they're both void in. But what should they actually throw, and which hand should actually rough? Now we come back to the main idea here that with a rough and discard, the aim is to extend the amount of trump tricks that we get. If we just cashed our hearts, we'd get 2. Alright, but we want 3. So how do we actually get those 3 tricks? So what we have to look at is if east plays a spade, we could pitch a diamond in the south hand and rough in the north, and then cross rough from there. Or we could rough in the south hand and pitch a diamond in the north. The one thing we don't want to do is pitch a club. This is a losing club, but we have this other way of getting rid of it. We were already roughing a heart with it, and if we pitched a club and roughed in the north hand, we would still only get 2 trump tricks, so we wouldn't have actually extended that. So you have to be aware of what we're trying to achieve when the opponents give us a rough and discard, and that's to extend the amount of trump tricks that we get. So you have to be aware of how this is actually going to work. So here we can pitch a diamond and rough here, because then later we'll be able to rough the diamond. Whereas if we pitch the club, we can't rough that anymore, so that won't actually work. So with the rough and discard, we've got those 3 conditions, and the overall objective is to extend the number of tricks that we're going to get in the trump suit. So the next technique that we have is playing into a finesse position. So we might want to get the opponents to lead into a finesse position, getting the vulnerable holding playing fourth to the trick. So let's look at this one. East has king 2 of spades, south has 5-4 of spades, west has 6-3, and the north player has ace queen. Okay, so what we want to do is look at what would have happened if each different player was on lead here. So if south had to lead, they could lead a spade to the queen, hoping that the west hand has the king of spades. But here east has it, so it won't work. The other thing we could do is if West was on lead, we again get that finesse position. If North's on lead, then they have to lead spades themselves and will never score the queen. But if East is on lead, they lead and our finesse position is the fourth to act, and we get an extra trick out of that. So if the opponents lead into a finesse position, we want the finesse position to be the fourth player to act or play to the trick, and then it's guaranteed that the finesse will work. Another one is if we just swap them around and East had ace queen of spades and North has king 2, then what can happen is if again, if East is on lead, we're always going to score our king of spades because East is leading. They can cash the ace and we play the 2 to it, or they can lead the queen and let our king score. So again, they're leading into this finesse position. Some other ones that come up is where we've got two-way finesses. So here, if South had king 10 8 of spades and North had ace jack 9, here it wouldn't matter which opponent we had on lead, West or East, because with the two-way finesse we can always make it run around and take a free finesse. So if West led, it doesn't matter who's got the queen here, we just play low from the next hand and we're either going to capture the queen or score a little card. If East is on lead, they play low, lead a spade, we play low, and we either capture the queen or score a little card. So with the two-way finesse, this time it doesn't matter which opponent's on lead, but we'll be able to score a trick with either of them. Similarly, if we had a holding like, let's say that North has king 9 8 of spades, and South has queen 10 7. Okay, so this time we're missing the ace, but we're also missing the jack. And if we had to lead a spade, we could lead a spade to the king and then finesse the way back, or we could lead a spade to the queen and finesse on the way back, but we still might lose two tricks because we might lose to the jack of spades. Whereas if East or West leads to this, we'll only ever lose to the ace of spades, because when they lead, we can play a low one, and then we'll either they put on the ace and we score our king and queen separately, or they put a low spade on and we get to score it cheaply, or they put the jack on and we capture it. So no matter who leads when we've got this sort of holding, we'll only ever lose one spade in that sort. The third kind of option is a frozen suit. So if we had something like North having jack 3 2 and South having queen 5 4, we'll give East king 10 8, and the West hand ace 9 6. Alright. So whoever leads this spade suit will give up a trick that their side sort of deserves. So this is a frozen suit. East-West are always getting two spade tricks, but they might get 3 if we have to lead. So if North-South has to lead and they play a low spade and the jack plays and the king will beat it, then the ace-9 is sitting over the queen and that won't work. Whereas if West or East has to lead this suit, North-South are guaranteed to get a spade trick. So if we look at this, if West plays the ace, we play low from both hands, and then East will score the king, but we get the queen in the end. If West instead plays a low card, we play low from the second position. East can put up the king, or if East plays low, we score our trick straight away, but if East puts up the king, now we've still got our queen and jack separate, and by force we're going to be able to get an extra trick. So this is a frozen suit where whichever player plays it, it's going to give away a trick for their side. So there's another suit holding where you want to get the opponents to play it. So we talked about a few different holdings. We talked about rough and discards, where we can try and get the opponents to give us a rough and discard. We can talk about getting the players to lead into finesse positions, or also frozen suits, which are pretty similar, where we want them to broach it and then we can get an extra trick. So there are a few different positions of what we can actually try and do to set up an end play, common end play situations where what we want to get the opponents to do. So this is our end objective. So you want to know what common end objectives can we try and get to, and then how can we build them up. So we just wanted to go over that a bit. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this lesson on common end play situations, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.